right, so welcome back, guys. We're going to take a few steps back and look at the platform as a whole from a 30,000 feet view. So in this session, we're going to talk about a start-to-finish flow of developing a BlackBerry 10 application. So anything starting from how you get the SDK, what tools and APIs are available, and how you can use them in your application to make that compelling user experience. All right, so before you get started, I would really recommend you bookmark this website. That's at developer.blackberry.com. And you have heard this morning that this website is completely changed, and you'll see a night and day difference if you go there and if you also went there before. Everything you need to find can be found with a few clicks, and I will guarantee you will not get lost. If I don't get lost, no one gets lost. So the website has all the downloads you need, all the tutorials that you need. That includes development guides. Sample applications that we've seen in the last session are all available in the website, as well as on our GitHub repository. The website can also point you to our blogs, the developer blogs. Please keep an eye on that blog, because we announce new stuff on that blog before anything else. The website can also point you to the hyperactive community, where people helping people, and we also monitor that forum to make sure that everything gets answered. So if you don't get an answer or don't get something resolved within 24 to 48 hours, something is terribly wrong. So we gotta jump in and get that question answered. And much more. So any tools, any dev guides, you name it. So anything related to developers for BlackBerry are all available in this website. So the first step, before we go any further, is to download, set up, and get started, right? So to download the SDK, you go to that developer website, which is at developer.blackberry.com/native. When you go to developer.blackberry.com and choose native, you'll actually see two options. One for the native SDK that's meant for developers who are targeting just C and C++. And there's also another website for Cascades for developers who are targeting Cascades with C++. So they're kind of a split there. However, the SDK for both and the tooling for both, the IDE for both, are the same. Okay, so no matter where you download that from, you get the full tooling, including the SDK. The second step after that is to register for your signing keys. Signing keys are used to sign your application so that we can identify, or more importantly, the user can identify who is this app from, okay? And Rob mentioned it a little bit earlier that you should never lose your signing key. It's so important that I keep telling people, once you get the signing keys, put it on a USB stick and put the USB stick in a bank's locker. It's that serious. Because if you lose your signing key, you basically lost ownership of your application. You can still deliver an upgrade to your application, but those users who already have your application will have a different icon popping up for the upgrade. Not a great thing to do. And once you have the signing key, you launch the IDE that you downloaded in step 1 and go through the setup wizard that needs to be done only once, and it will take you through setting up your signing keys, setting up your debug tokens for debugging, and whatnot. So once you've done that, you don't have to think about signing keys anymore, but please back it up before you forget about signing keys. And the IDE handles signing automatically. You export a release build, it'll build the application, sign the application, and if you have a device connected, it'll also deploy the application on the device. And the last step is obvious, right? Whenever we get something new, we want to try it out. So what you can do is you can try one of the examples that ships with the SDK or the IDE, in this case, Hello World, and get a feel of what a project looks like, right? And how to build it, how to deploy it on the device. So get a feel for the process involved in that. The second thing I wanted to talk to you about is BlackBerry Flow. Apps that flow uses Cascades to build its UIs and provide that really differentiated and awesome user experience to the user. Cascades, as we have seen, is a very rich UI framework, and it supports writing code in both C++ and QML. And its multi-threaded model allows application to run smoothly no matter how processor intensive their code is. Cascades also comes with implicit animations. Like we've seen in the samples, the controls are automatically animated without you having to do any work. You just have to say, I want to use a slider, and the slider is animated. And it's not just animated when the user moves the slider. If you programmatically change the value of the slider, it's not just going to jump from place A to place B. It's actually going to animate very fast, yet giving the user the feedback what just happened. Okay? So no negative surprises, no frictions caused to the user. And it really makes the user the king, in control of the device. Gary mentioned, I'll quote him, getting the application out of the way, although through the application, the user does its job. And it also provides a very flexible framework to customize the Cascades controls. You can write your own custom controls using the existing controls, or you can just create something totally different using Cascades. We'll see a few examples of that in the later slides. So when it comes to creating apps, you use QML to design the UI. Note that you can do the same thing in C++, but this is what we recommend, because it'll make your life a lot easier when it comes to changing and maintaining your code in the future. And use C++ for application logic. Okay? You can, now Cascades comes with a JavaScript engine that can do quite a bit of application logic, maybe not all, but it can handle quite a bit. But it's not really recommended to write a whole application, including the application logic, within Cascades, unless your application is really, really small. Okay? And so for that reason, always use C++ for application logic for anything that is medium to large size. Now, when it comes to platform APIs and services, we try our best to provide API that works with Qt very well. So we provide Qt-flavored APIs for every C API we have. However, if something is missing, or we're still working on something to move that to Qt, you can still drop down to the C level and call C APIs directly while that is still being built. Okay? So there is nothing that should be blocking you from using if it's already available in the platform. And any platform features are first and foremost available in C, and then it finds its way up to HTML5, Cascades, Qt, and whatnot. And if there is something that is not part of the platform at all, you can go and grab any open source framework that is written in C or C++ and port that over to BlackBerry 10. So for example, someone can port OpenCV for image manipulation, right? And that can be reused in your BlackBerry 10 application. And you can go to our GitHub repository to see tons of frameworks and APIs that are already ported and proven to work in BlackBerry 10. So it really shows the open nature of the platform as a whole. So we've talked about QML a little bit before. It stands for Qt Modeling Language. And QML makes it really easy for designers to be part of the development process. That's really how it should be. Companies who has designers for UIs can use QML without knowing any C++ and design the whole UI and just deliver that to the developers who will code against them. It's also very useful to create rapid prototypes when you want to show something to a company before you get started with the real work. And you can also use QML to switch your UI or provide different UIs for different companies. You can have a white label product and can serve to different companies with just some minor changes in your QML, or just replace the QML completely with a new QML that looks completely different so that it adheres to the branding of the company you're delivering it to. And QML is not just a language that helps you lay out the components. Okay? Layout is nice, very nice, in fact. But QML also comes with a JavaScript rendering engine that allows you to write JavaScript functions right within QML to implement some tiny parts of the application logic, if you will. But like I said, it's not really recommended to implement complicated application logic in QML. It's going to make your QML very messy and very deeply coupled with the application logic. You can also use a separate JS file where all your JavaScript APIs or functions can reside, and then you can call the JavaScript functions from the QML file to the JS file. So C++ and QML, they're both part of Cascades. Yes, it's true. And it's a two-way street. You can access any object you have defined in QML, and you can also access any C++ object from QML. So that makes both the QML guy and the C++ guy really, really happy because they're interchangeable. So creating an object in QML basically translates to creating a C++ object, which is handled by the Cascades UI framework. Although there is this flexibility of doing almost anything in C++ or QML, like I said, it's really highly recommended that you do not implement your whole application logic in QML unless your application is very trivial. When you think about QML and C++, I would encourage you to think about MVC. It's a model view controller pattern that was in their mind when they designed this application framework. So create your UI or the views in QML and maintain a model for each view in C++. And then you can connect the model in C++ with the view in QML. So you can, once you bind them, you can do property binding in QML. And once you bind them, the QML and view, the view, the QML, and the model always stays in sync. So your application logic can also be in C++ and changing the model and not the QML or the QML objects. Okay? It's not a good idea to tie your application logic with the user interface that tightly, because that makes it extremely difficult to change code in the future. So this provides, the Cascades framework provides, or in a way encourages you to use the MVC pattern so that the application logic can work with model. The UI doesn't have a clue. The UI just stays in sync with the model. Let's talk a bit about extend. This is one of the core principles of BlackBerry 10. Apps that extend, that goes beyond your application. So instead of locking the user in within your application, you should be leveraging not just other applications on the device. You should be leveraging the sensors, the services, the platform services, the cloud services, and what have the platform, right? And to do that, while you do that, you actually provide a deeply integrated user experience for the user that the user is just going to love. BlackBerry has always been known for this, to provide that tight integration with the platform so that users can move from apps to apps, connect with other apps, connect with other services. And to facilitate the extend feature, we've created all these services that's available in the platform, anything starting with BBM integration, invoking another application, database access, access to sensors such as accelerometer, gyroscope, or magnetometer, networking, advertisement service, payment service, you name it. Everything the platform has is open to the applications one way or the other. So let's talk a little bit about how an application is installed on the device and where it resides once it's installed. Each app is confined in its own sandbox. Now, we're not doing that to restrict you from anything. We're doing that intentionally to keep the application secure from other applications and services. So once you're in the sandbox, you, as the application, has full access to that sandbox. But there are some exceptions. The app/native folder is where your application binaries exist, including your assets like your images, sounds, or QML files. And these are all packaged as a bar file, and that's what resides in app/native. However, you do not have write permission in this folder. You only have read permission, and that's for a good reason. Remember signing? When you sign your application, it actually signs against the bytes you had in the binary at that time. So if you change, if we allow you to change, or if you change a single byte in your binary, the signing breaks, so does the application. So not a good idea, so it's intentionally blocked and gives you only read access to that folder. The data folder is used for storing application data. So any data you want to persist over application relaunch or reinstall, you can use the data folder to save data there. And even when the user upgrades your application to a new version, the data folder will stay as is until you delete them. Logs folder is used for storing logs. So all your printfs, couts, or qdebug messages go straight to the logs folder. But you can also create custom log files there if you wish. But note that the logs folder is deleted after every time the application is restarted. So if you have an issue to reproduce, you let the user reproduce the issue, exit the app, grab the log files, and send it over to you. But if the application is restarted, the logs folder will start fresh. The temp folder is meant for storing temporary data on a single application session. So once you launch your application, the temp folder will be there. You can store your temporary files or data, and once the application exits, the temporary folder is deleted. The shared folder is actually not part of your application sandbox. It's actually a virtual link to the shared space of the device. This is where the user saves the user's data. So things like images, videos, pictures, books, bookmarks, everything gets saved in the shared folder. So, however, to have access to this shared folder, the user must give you permission to access this folder. And once you have that, you have both read and write permissions. But do not store anything other than user data. If your application generates user data, then ask for this permission and store user data there. When it comes to database support, we support both Qt and libsql. However, if you're making a Cascades application, which I believe most of you are, you should be using Qt just because it plays very well with the Qt application framework and provides signals and slots mechanisms to do asynchronous database operations. However, if you have existing code for libsql, you can always reuse that code and still use that from your Cascades application. So here is a code sample for Qt usage. It's very simple. You create a database, you open that database, create a query, and execute that query, and you're done. Network connectivity is very important, especially for BlackBerry, where we have the always-on experience. The network connectivity to perform network operations, to connect to websites, to connect to HTTP resources or socket resources, you can use the Qt Network Access Manager, which also comes as part of Qt Core. You use the Qt Network Request and Reply to create a request, send it over, and get the data as a reply, and your data will be there as a reply. You can also do raw socket connections, such as TCP sockets or UDP sockets. And you can also do be a host as a server connection by using TCP server and UDP servers. So here's an example of how to create a network connection. So you just define a QURL, and you create an access manager, and you connect. Everything in Qt is connecting signals and slots whenever it comes to event handling. So Network Access Manager has a signal called finished. So once the fetch of the data is complete, Network Access Manager will call the signal. And if that is connected to your slot, which is true in this case, and your slot is reply finished, your reply finished method will be executed. So all you need to do after the connection is call manager.get with your request. When it comes to sensors, BlackBerry 10 has quite a rich set of sensors, if you will. It has a GPS sensor to get your location. It has an accelerometer. It has a gyroscope, a magnetometer, an NFC, a light sensor, and as well as proximity sensor. Using these sensors, or a combination of these sensors, you can really tell a lot about the user. There are apps that are very smart to detect user behavior just by using sensors. And that's what these sensors will enable for BlackBerry 10 developers. When it comes to USB and Bluetooth support, we have a whole bunch of Bluetooth profiles supported on the device. Some of them just works out of the box. For example, the HID profile or the HID profile is supposed to work out of the box as soon as you hook up a keyboard or a mouse to your BlackBerry 10 device. However, there are some profiles that provides flexibility in terms of raw communication, such as the serial port profile. So that profile is also supported and comes with a full set of APIs that allows you to connect to a Bluetooth device and open a serial port both as a server or as a client, and then have that pipe to transfer raw bytes. When it comes to USB, we have support for something called the RNDIS protocol. So what that protocol does is when you connect two devices over USB, both will get an IP address, and you can just create simple socket connections over that using those IP addresses. But the caveat to that is that both sides need some kinds of network stack to handle socket connections. And we are also supporting the Android accessory protocol to enable lots of accessories to communicate with the BlackBerry 10 device. So that's how you provide an extended experience beyond your application using the platform services, or beyond the glass using the cloud services or the sensors. When it comes to connect, apps that connect lets the user be in your application and connect to the social networks or just networks that matters the most to them. And at the core of this connect concept is the Invocation Framework. What the Invocation Framework allows you to do is it allows you to invoke another application and ask or request to perform a specific task. So here's an example. BBM might want to open a doc file that it received in a chat session on behalf of the user. And what do you do after you receive a doc file? You open it, right? So user, it's totally a valid use case within BBM to have the option to open the doc file right within BBM. However, BBM is not a renderer for doc files. It doesn't have to be, right? There are renderers for doc files in the device, so BBM can just invoke one of them. So we have all these apps on the other side. One can open a doc file, one can open some image files, and the last guy is good for nothing. Well, it's good for something, but not in this context. You don't get on the device unless you're good for something, right? However, well, we can see from far, far away that there is a doc file renderer and BBM wants to open a doc file. A match made in heaven. However, they don't have any way to communicate between them, and that's exactly where Invocation Framework comes in. So in goes BBM's request, Invocation does its little magic and finds the right app, right? So all these apps actually registers with Invocation Framework to become potential targets when the invocation request comes to Invocation Framework. And the best part is it promotes app discovery without even knowing what apps are there, right? They define all the capabilities, and this guy just tells Invocation Framework, I need to get this done, do it. So some basics about Invocation Framework. There is a source, which is the client app that invokes. There's a target, that gets invoked. There is an action that defines what kind of action needs to be performed. An example of that would be open, or view, or set, or share. And there is an associated data with every action. Well, there might be some actions that doesn't need any data, but usually there will be some data to perform the action on. So in BBM's case, if it opens a doc file, it will send an invocation request with the action open and the data being the doc file itself. Now, before I move on to BBM, let me tell you something more about Invocation Framework. And this is still secret. So the way Invocation Framework stands today, it invokes the application in a new window, right? But in the next release, hopefully, we're going to have something called cards. What the hell are cards, right? Cards are pages or screens of applications that can be borrowed by the client app who is invoking. So I can invoke, for example, Docs2Go to open a doc file. Instead of launching Docs2Go in a new window, which is not, well, with the BlackBerry Flow, it's a good experience, but still not great, right? What really should happen is the renderer of Docs2Go embeds right into your application. How cool is that? We've all done it in desktop computers. Whenever we open a PDF file in Chrome, it renders right within Chrome, right? And it's probably using a third-party solution like Adobe Reader, right? But it gets embedded. That's the point. It doesn't invoke a new window or a pop-up to do that. So it provides, it does much less friction to the user and the user experience. So BBM, we know it's a great messaging application, highly reliable. We all love the R's and the D's. But what good can it do for your application? BBM is not just an application. It's also a framework, a social framework. Before I get started with the framework, let me tell you that there are currently 55 million users that are using BBM daily or weekly. And you can, with the framework, if you integrate with BBM, just imagine how viral your app can go. You can embed chats right into your application. You can update user status saying the user has done something with your app, which is of course, will include a link to your application in App World. So all the users' social buddies on BBM will see that and will be curious, right? And recommendations from friends are really taken seriously. If I recommend something to my friend, he will probably look at it. If I recommend something to a random people I don't know, maybe not, right? So the conversion rate through BBM is much better than just random advertising. And you get that for free. You don't have to spend any marketing dollar to do so. So integrate with BBM and provide that integrated experience to the user, and bring that BBM engagement within your application or within BBM. So all this translates into increased monetization. I've talked to tons of developers who told me firsthand that after they integrated with BBM, their download rates or their purchase rates just went through the roof. So if your application is not integrated with BBM, think about it. There are some applications that might not need to be integrated with BBM, but most do. So keep brainstorming about that, how you can integrate with a social network like BBM. Now, we all love money. I know I do. And we all want to monetize our applications. There are different models of monetizing your application. You can provide it for a fee or a one-time fee. That's paid applications. You can provide it as freemium, where you download for free and then you have some in-app purchase. And you can also provide it for completely free, backed by advertisement. Now, whichever works for you is for you to figure out. We, as the platform, provide you all the tool to target all those three models. Well, a paid app is just a paid app in app world. It's a simple model. But if you want to offer your application for free and needs to integrate advertising in your application, you can use the advertising APIs or the advertising service to integrate your application with multiple ad networks. So all the hard work is done by the aggregator service that we have as the BlackBerry advertising service. And you get advertisement from multiple sources, contextual to your application, relevant to your application, so there is more probability for a user to click on those ads. So if you show contents to the user, you can pick tags and get advertisements based on those. It's powerful and deeply integrated. It's extremely easy to use. Those of you who has done it in BlackBerry Java knows that 3 lines of codes gets you advertisements. The other model is, of course, the freemium model, where you offer your application for free and then provide in-app digital goods for purchase. And that is enabled by the payment service. Now, there are a couple of advantages for using payment service. First, it supports that freemium model. And it's very secure, fast, and more importantly, it's familiar to the user. How? Because the payment service actually uses the same payment flow of App World. So once the user clicks on an item that he or she needs to buy within your application, a nice familiar flow comes in from BlackBerry App World, prompting the user, do you want to purchase this? So no credit card information, no PayPal information needs to be shared with your application. And that makes the user really, really comfortable. And all those information are already pre-stored in App World, so App World can just complete the purchase with one click. And once the purchase is done, App World will send back a notification to your application that this guy has purchased this digital good, do whatever you want. Now you can just tell the user that I'm a fraud, but why would you do that, right? You better give him access to this digital good. Oh, one thing I missed is the payment service APIs are available for WebWorks, Java, of course, ActionScript, as well as within Air and the native SDK. The distribution channel for BlackBerry 10 apps is going to be only one. That is called the BlackBerry App World. Now, with BlackBerry Java, I know we had like 10 different ways to load applications. All that is gone. It does more bad than good. We recognize that, and we made App World the single channel where the user can load applications. But you, as a developer, can sideload applications over USB by using a debug token. Now, debug tokens has some limitations, of course, so that someone doesn't create a new App World. But Rob will take you through that in the next session. So few stats about BlackBerry App World. It has a huge reach. It's in 170 countries, supports 26 currencies, and 7 languages. And this is very important. You can make an application that goes global, and that's just not local. And over 90% of the 78 million BlackBerry subscribers today have access to BlackBerry App World. And I have to say this. There is this common culture among BlackBerry users. If it's a good app, they're willing to pay the money. Now, there are platforms out there where users expect everything for free, or platforms that are too crowded. But BlackBerry App World really makes more money for you. And Alex talked about it this morning, that how BlackBerry developers makes more money. And these stats stands as the reasons why. So it has a great reach, users have access to it, and there is this, more importantly, there is this culture to buy apps, to pay for apps, even to pay for digital goods, for in-app payments. And we've just reached over 3 billion downloads and over 90,000 apps, close to 100,000 apps for sale. Well, that's the last slide. And I'm hoping you have some questions. So if you do, please feel free to ask them. We'll do like a 5 minutes Q&A. Yeah. It is a 70-30 split. So the question was, what portion of the app price RIM takes? RIM takes 30%, developer gets 70. Yes. Yes. Yes, you can. Yeah. Go ahead. So the question is USB host mode supported? Rob is actually much better expert than I am on USB. But yes, the USB host mode will be supported, but it will be supported via a intermediate peripheral. But I don't know how much details we can release about that. But it is something that we are thinking about, definitely. Sorry. Okay, so the question is, when you invoke, is it a fire and forget thing, or does it also give you a response? So when you invoke an application in a new window, you only get either an error or a success as a response. However, remember the cards concept I talked about? If you're invoking cards instead of applications, then you can pass messages between the card and the calling application as many times as you want. And you can also do a lot of integrated gestures between your application and the card, like you can peek back to your application and go back to the card or just close the card. So cards is really what's going to make us stand out in the crowd. It's something very new for the mobile platform, and we hope to push the boundaries of it at its best. Yeah? Right. Great question. So the question is, can cards be a full application instead of just a portion of the application? So the answer to that is yes. Because when you get invoked as a card, what happens is your application gets a notification that you got invoked as a card. So give me the card, right? So application has the full freedom to put anything on that card that the application wants. And even within the life cycle of the card, the content can change as the target application wills. Yes? The question is, can the calling application modify the target card? The answer is no, because the target card actually, the code for that comes from the target application. So that application has full control. But the best you can do is you can send a close request so that the card gets closed, or you can pass messages to the cards in the middle of the interaction. Any other questions before we wrap up? Yes. Hope this is the last or second last. Yes, the gentleman in the back, please. Can you speak up a bit for the last portion? Okay, so the question is, the gentleman there wants to connect his application to a database that is stored in a remote server. And it's really, well, we as a platform provide the ways to connect to any service, right? Make REST-based calls or web service calls from your application. But it's really up to you how you want to handle, how you want the server to handle that request and respond to the device. So as a platform, I can say the capability is definitely there, But you just have to decide on how you want to do it on the server side. Yes? The revenue split? Okay. So the question is, for in-app purchases, is the revenue split the same as the application purchases, or is it different? To be honest, I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely no, it really shouldn't be different from 70/30. I mean, I'll be really surprised if it is, but I just don't know. I'm 99% sure. Let's just put it that way. Yes? Mm-hmm. We have to take that offline. So the question is, the gentleman is facing an issue with this signing key registration. So we'll take that offline and fix that problem for you. Okay? All right, last question. So the question is, between the three models, the free, the freemium, or the paid application, which model works best? There is no single model that works best for every application. Can't really answer directly to that because it really depends on the type of your application and the audience you're targeting for. And then you have to find the optimum balance. But if you want to talk to me offline or talk to any of the evangelists offline, they will be happy to assist you with deciding on, depending on the type of your application. Okay? All right, so with that, thank you very much. And I really wish you all make apps for BlackBerry 10 and take advantage of Flow, Connect, and Extend. And I'm really looking forward to that. So that's my email address, shaq@rim.com. Yeah, it's an accident. That's my first initial and my last name. And my Twitter handle is @ShadidHaque. You can follow me. You can send me DMs. I'm usually very responsive in both of those channels, either email or Twitter. So find me. I'll find you as well. Thank you very much, guys.